Okay, once again, good morning. So, our topic for this morning, for this session, is the first part of the strategy implementation. This is global strategy. If you can still remember in our discussion with strategy or our discussion with strategy formulation, we also have different parts, diba? So, from a wider perspective, we narrowed down to the departmental activities or strategies. So, from the business and the different or corporate structures, we narrowed it down to the different functional areas. So this time, for the strategy implementation, let us discuss first the global strategy. Okay, and since the strategy implementation is one of the most competitive and difficult aspects of strategy implementation, the strategy plans nor strategic plans. So one of the most important things that we have to consider in strategy implementation is the move no, to extend our operations outside of the home country of the company. So again, this was discussed also before that the challenge would always be going global. Okay, so because by doing global or by going global, you're also going to consider your innovation and sustainability issues or strategies. Now, speaking of global strategy, this is the sum total of the activities that an organization takes in order for the organization to compete in markets outside its home country. Given that one of the three pillars of this text is globalization, what we have to consider is that we have crafted different global issues. We have to consider different global issues and understand how global organizations concerns are that would normally arise in the operation, okay, if we are in a global situation. Now, many companies start with sales outside the country in which the business begins, and virtually every company eventually has sales also in many other countries, especially now that globalization is very easy, no? Unlike before, where uh, globalization is not that rampant, it's not that easy to implement, but nowadays, uh, it would be important to consider also the different external factors, no, attached to globalization. Running a truly global organization is far more than simply selling goods and services around the world. It is an operational mindset that has its own unique issues and concerns. So you have to consider also your human resource, your taxes. You have to consider also your value chain. You have to consider your supplies, no, your distribution channels. So all of these affect your global company. That's why we have to understand and assess global strategy as well. Now, research indicates that shareholders reward companies who grow faster outside of the country where they operate, and that growing internationally is positively associated with firm profitability. Okay, so a corporation can select from several strategic options regarding the most appropriate method for entering a foreign market or establishing facilities in another company. And these options vary from simple exporting to acquisitions to even having management contracts. Now, some of the most popular options for international entry are as follows. Number one, exporting. So a good way to minimize risk and experiment with a specific product is exporting, shipping goods produced in the company's home country to other countries for marketing. So you have goods that you produce, like for example, you have products that you produce here in the Philippines, and then you eventually distribute these products to other countries for them to market and sell. So the company could choose to handle all critical functions itself, or it could contract these functions to an export management company. Okay, so exporting nowadays is popular for small businesses because of the internet and rapid advance of overnight express services, which has reduced the once formidable costs of exporting. Many years ago, we had difficulty exporting goods, no? But nowadays, we have express deliveries that has contributed to the competitive edge, of the different companies who do exportation. Another international entry strategy would be licensing. Now, under this agreement, the licensing firm grants rights to another firm in the host country to produce and or sell a product. Now, the licensee pays compensation to the licensing firm in return for technical and sometimes marketing expertise. Now, this is especially useful strategy if the trademark or the brand name is well known, but the company does not have sufficient funds to finance its entering the country directly. So the technology is unique and not easily replicable, or if the country makes entry via investment difficult or impossible. So meaning there are many regulations affecting that country, where you will have difficulty entering the market. The third type of entry would be franchising. Now, under this agreement, the franchisor grants rights to another company to open a retail store using the franchisor's name and operating system. In exchange, the franchisee pays the franchisor a percentage of its sales as a royalty. Franchising provides an opportunity for a firm to establish a presence in countries where the population or per capita spending is not sufficient for a major expansion effort. Again, the most common example perhaps of franchising companies are the McDonald's franchises. Okay? Another type would be the joint venture. Forming a joint venture between a foreign corporation and a domestic company has been one of the most popular strategies used to enter a new country. Okay? Why? In this case kasi, you will notice that these companies who are local representation of the companies in foreign countries, they have already the connections, no? They know the laws, they know the regulations of the country, so they have already created a network. That's why it would be easier for foreign companies to enter these countries through joint ventures. Often, companies form joint ventures to combine the resources and expertise needed to develop new products or technologies. So a joint venture may be an association between a company and a firm in the host country or a government agency in that country. Okay? So as I have said earlier, a quick method of obtaining local management, it also reduces the risks of expropriation and harassment by host country officials. The fifth one is acquisition. A relatively quick way to move into an international area is through acquisition, meaning you are going to buy or purchase another company that is already operating in that area. Synergistic benefits can result if the company acquires a firm with strong complementary product lines and a good distribution network. We also have the greenfield development. So sometimes, but when it's new, no, the term itself is very unique. If a company doesn't want to purchase another company's problems along with its assets, it may choose the greenfield development and build its own manufacturing plant and distribution system. Now, there are some researches that were conducted and showed that firms possessing high levels of technology, multinational experience, and diverse product lines prefer greenfield development to acquisitions. This is usually a far more complicated and expensive operation than acquisition, but it allows a company more freedom in designing the plant, choosing the suppliers, and hiring a workforce. For example, Nissan, Honda, and Toyota built auto factories in rural areas of Great Britain and then hired a young workforce with no experience in the industry. BMW, on the other hand, did the same thing when it built its auto plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina, to make its Z3 and Z4 sports car. So that's why in early 2016, BMW announced it had exported its 2 million vehicles built in South Carolina. 70% of the vehicles made in Spartanburg are shipped around the world through the port of Charleston. Another one is production sharing. This is actually coined by Peter Drucker. The term production sharing generally refers to the process of combining the higher labor skills and technology available in developed countries with the lower cost labor available in developing countries. Another term for this would be outsourcing. You guessed it right. Outsourcing. Many companies have moved data processing, programming, and customer service activities offshore to Ireland, India, Barbados, Jamaica, Singapore, and even Philippines. Why? Because wages are lower and people in these countries are speaking English and they have a strong telecommunications network. Although I doubt, no, for the Philippines. Payroll outsourcing is the fastest growing segment of global human resource outsourcing. Actually, this is true, no? I had a student once in my MBA 202. They are tawag nito, there are foreign students who are working in Dubai and they are connected with a company that does the payroll activity of the different other companies. So remember our discussion last, or I don't know if you have already watched the video, but in that discussion, in the functional strategy, just to reiterate, no, according uh, to that discussion, you're going to assess your different divisions or different departments. The department where you don't have a distinctive or competency, that department is the most likely candidate for offshoring or outsourcing. Okay? And basically, if a company does not have competency in payroll processing, then they do payroll outsourcing and they allow other companies to do that for them. So that's typical example of production sharing. Okay? Another one is the turnkey operations. These are typically contracts for the construction of operating facilities in exchange for a fee. So the facilities are transferred to the host country or firm when they are already complete. The customer is usually a government agency of a country that has decreed that a particular product must be produced locally and under its control. Okay, so you might say that this is similar to the build, operate, transfer. Okay, tama, no? Although there's a difference, it's a variation. The build, operate, transfer concept, or the BOT, is a variation of the turnkey operation. Why? Instead of turning the facility, usually a power plant or the road, no, or the toll road, mga extra expressways, over to the host country when completed, the company operates the facility for a fixed period of time, during which it earns back its investment plus a profit. It then turns the facility over to the government at little or no cost to the host country. And usually, they do the turnover when the project is already fully depreciated. That's what happens, no, in BOT concept projects. While on the other hand, for turnkey operations, foreign companies construct the project, and then after constructing the project, they turn over the project to the local government or to the national government. And this, of course, the national government will pay for them, no? Will pay for the project. Okay, so that's the difference between the turnkey operations and the BOT concept. Lastly, management contracts. Here, no, a large corporation operating throughout the world is likely to have a large amount of management talent at its disposal. Management contracts offer a means through which a corporation can use some of its personnel to assist a firm in a host country for a specified fee and period of time. Management contracts are common when a host government expropriates part or all of a foreign-owned company's holdings in its country. So the contracts allow the firm to continue to earn some income from its investment and keep the operations going until local management is trained. Okay? Next is international coordination. It's important that multinational companies have better or effective international coordination. An international company is one that engages in any combination of activities, from exporting or importing to full-scale manufacturing in foreign countries. So a multinational corporation, or MNC, in contrast, is a highly developed international company with a deep involvement throughout the world, plus a worldwide perspective in its management and decision making. For a multinational corporation to be considered global, it must manage its worldwide operations as if they were totally interconnected. This approach works best when the industry has moved from being multi-domestic, meaning each country's industry is essentially separate from the same industry in other countries, to global, wherein each country is part now of a one worldwide industry. So the global MNC faces the dual challenge of achieving scale economies through standardization while at the same time responding to local customer differences. Since international coordination of multinational companies is important, it's also important to consider the international strategic alliances. Strategic alliances are like joint ventures and licensing agreements between an MNC and a local partner in a host country, which are becoming increasingly popular as a means by which a corporation can gain entry into other countries, especially those countries that limit foreign ownership. The key to the successful implementation of these strategies is the selection of the local partner. Each party needs to assess not only the strategic fit of each country, a company's project strategy, but also the fit of each company's respective resources. Now, research reveals that firms favor past partners when forming new alliances. And also, there are key drivers for strategic fit between alliance partners, which are the following. Number one, partners must agree on fundamental values and have a shared vision about the potential for joint value creation. Alliance strategy must be derived from business, corporate, and functional strategy. The alliance must be important to both partners, especially to top management. Also, partners must be mutually dependent for achieving clear and realistic objectives. Joint activities must have added value for customers and the partners. The alliance must be accepted by key stakeholders. And lastly, partners contribute key strengths but protect core competencies. Okay, so again, this is especially important when the environment uncertainty is high. No? Now, since we are talking about international development, how do we develop? No? How do we create an international development situation? So what are the different stages of becoming an international organization where international development is manifested? Corporations operating internationally tend to evolve through the five common stages, both in their relationships with widely geographic markets and in the manner in which they structure their operations and programs. So these stages involve number one, the stage one, wherein the company is merely a domestic company. Okay? So the primarily domestic company exports some of its products through local dealers and distributors in the foreign countries. The impact on the organization structure is minimal because an export department at corporate headquarters handles everything. Okay? The second stage would be for the domestic company with export division. Success in stage one leads the company to establish its own sales company with offices in other countries to eliminate the middlemen and to better control marketing. So in stage one, you are merely working or operating as a domestic company. If you are doing exports, you export your goods to other countries, and there are people in other countries or companies in other countries who do the selling, channeling of your goods for you. But in stage two, no, you now have your own sales company, your own offices, no, in other countries, so that middlemen and distributors or distribution channels are being eliminated, no, to better control marketing. Because exports have now become more important, the company establishes an export division to oversee foreign sales offices. So your production is still in the domestic country, but your sales are already doing foreign operations. For stage three, primarily domestic company with international division. Success in stage one and stage two leads the company to establish manufacturing facilities in addition to sales and service offices in key countries. So in stage two, your production is in the host or in the domestic country. You do the selling outside. But in stage three, you already have production outside the country, no? Meanwhile, in stage four, you have now become a multinational corporation with multi-domestic emphasis. Since a full-fledged multinational corporation, the company increases its investments in other countries. The company now establishes a local operating division or company in the host country to better serve the market. So in this case, the product line is expanded and local manufacturing capacity is established. Managerial functions like product development, finance, marketing, and so on are also organized locally. Over time, the parent company acquires other related businesses, broadening the base of the local operating division. As the subsidiary in the host country successfully develops a strong regional presence, it achieves greater autonomy and self-sufficiency. So the operations in each country are nevertheless managed separately as if each is a domestic company. The last stage, the stage 5, is a multinational corporation with global emphasis. So the most successful multinational corporations move into a fifth stage in which they have worldwide human resources, research and development, and financing strategies. Typically operating in a global industry, the multinational corporation denationalizes its operations and plans product design, manufacturing, and marketing around worldwide considerations. Also, global considerations are now dominate now the organizational design. And the global multinational corporation structure itself in a matrix form around some combination of geographic areas, product lines, and functions, where all managers are responsible for dealing with international as well as domestic issues. Implementing a strategy of international expansion takes a lot of planning and can be very expensive. Studies show that nearly 80% of mid-size and larger companies send some of their employees abroad. This is known as expatriation, and the employees are known as expats. The Economist reported that over three-quarters of companies report spending 2 to 3 times an expat's annual salary on a typical assignment. Also, research tells us that between 20 and 45% of the expatriate assignments are actually failures, with managers sent abroad returning early because of job dissatisfaction or difficulties in adjusting to a foreign country. Of those who stayed for the duration of their assignment, nearly one-third did not perform as well as expected. One-fourth of those completing an assignment left their company within 1 year of returning home. Why? Because they have been pirated, no, by the competitors. Now, one common mistake is failing to educate the person about the customs values in other countries. Primarily due to cultural differences, managerial style and human resource practices must be tailored to fit the particular situations in other countries. Studies show that only 11% of human resource managers have ever worked abroad. Most have little understanding of a global assignment's unique personal and professional challenges and thus fail to develop the training necessary for such an assignment. So this is complicated by the fact that 90% of the companies select employees for an international assignment based on their technical expertise while ignoring other areas. So what brought about, no, this failure? A lack of knowledge of national and ethnic differences can make managing an international operation extremely difficult. Example shows the issues that have to be dealt with exists in Malaysia. Three ethnic groups live in Malaysia: Malay, Chinese, and Indian, each with their own language and religion, attending different schools in a preference to not work in the same factories with each other. Because of the importance of cultural distinctions such as this, multinational corporations are now putting more emphasis on intercultural training for managers being sent on an assignment to a foreign country. Imagine, who would have thought, no, that these ethnic groups would create chaos by simply having an intercultural differences. So if you are a management, the top management of multinational corporations, you really have to think of the different ethnic groups first before you make your decisions, particularly with regards to training or in any other activities that would bring them all together in one setting. So that could be a dilemma on the part of the top level management. So to improve organizational learning, many multinational corporations are providing their managers with international assignments lasting as long as 5 years. So upon their return to the headquarters, these expatriates have an in-depth understanding now of the company's operations in another part of the world. So recent work on the subject has led to a set of recommendations to improve the entire expatriation process. But we're not going to discuss lengthily on that na lang, ha? What is important is that we consider expatriates stay and understanding of the cultural differences when they are assigned to foreign location. Okay, so that when they go back to their domestic areas or their countries of origin, they are able to implement whatever they have learned from their foreign expatriation. Next, the three most widely used techniques for measurement of performance evaluation are ROI, budget analysis, and historical comparisons. In one study, 95% of the corporate officers interviewed stated that they use the same evaluation techniques for foreign and domestic operations. Okay, so those are ROI, budget analysis, and historical comparisons. Rate of return was mentioned as the single most important measure. However, ROI can cause problems when it is applied to international operations. Why? Because of foreign currencies, different accounting systems, different rates of inflation, different tax laws, and the use of transfer pricing. Both the net income figure and the investment base may be seriously distorted. No? So for example, if one country has an income tax or a corporate tax of 25%, another country has a corporate tax of 10%. So that could affect the net income, which could eventually affect also the ROI. So to deal with different accounting systems throughout the world, we have standardized and developed our international financial reporting standards. This is to harmonize accounting practices. Also, the FASB, or the Financial Accounting Standards Board, oversees the generally accepted accounting principles that is used in the United States. So for over a decade now, these two groups worked to merge their systems, and there was hope that there would be a single set of standards by 2015. However, much like bringing the metric system to the United States, implementation has not gone as planned. So more than 116 countries worldwide are using IFRS or PFRS in the Philippines, but the United States and 7 other countries have maintained their own standards. So this could again affect the measurement of performance. If you're going to compare companies that are operating in the US and in the other 7 countries, and in other countries that are also following a different set of standards for accounting. Nevertheless, enforcement and cultural interpretations of the international rules can still vary by country and may undercut what is hoped to be a uniform accounting system. Now, a study of 79 multinational corporations revealed that international transfer pricing from one country unit to another is primarily used not to evaluate performance, but to minimize taxes. So taxes are an important issue for multinational companies, given that corporate tax rates vary. As I have said earlier, it could be 40% in one country and 10% in another country. So recently, there has been an uproar about the issue with companies moving operations or headquarters to Ireland with its 12.5% corporate tax rate. Now, in 2016, Apple was being investigated by regulators who had accused the iPhone maker of using subsidiaries in Ireland to avoid paying taxes on revenue generated outside the United States. Transfer pricing. I do hope that you understand the connection between transfer pricing, okay, and the products of companies that are doing global operations. Okay, you have discussed this one in your management accounting class, perhaps, no, when you were in your second year. But to put it into a greater perspective or bigger perspective, what you have discussed was only for companies that are operating locally. But try to figure it out where companies are doing global operations. And each of these countries have differences in terms of tax payments or tax rates. So why would I produce no, why would I produce or make or put my production facility in an area where tax rates could be higher? So most probably, I will be having my plant or factory or facility in an area where corporate taxes would be lower. Okay? And eventually, transfer these assets or these finished goods to other countries where tax rates are that high or are high in comparison to the country where tax or where the factory is there but the tax rates are low. No, so Transfer pricing is actually up, not to evaluate performance, but more on minimizing taxes. So this is a scheme for these different multinational companies. Another one that we have to consider is that transfer pricing can be one way wherein a parent company can reduce taxes and capture profits from a subsidiary. Other common ways of transferring profits to the parent company, also called as the repatriation of profits, are through dividends, royalties, and management fees. Okay? So among the most important barriers to international trade are the different standards for products and services. There are at least three categories of standards. First, we have safety or environmental. Second, we have energy efficiency. And third, testing procedures. Now, existing standards have been drafted by such bodies as the British Standards Institute in the United Kingdom, the Japanese Industrial Standards Committee in France, the DIN in Germany, CSA in Canada, and or American Standards Institute in the United States. These standards traditionally created entry barriers that served to fragment various industries such as major home appliances by country. So a multinational corporation should use loose controls on its foreign units. The management of each geographic unit should be given considerable operational latitude, but it should be expected to meet some performance targets. Because profit and ROI measures are often unreliable in international operations, it is recommended that multinational corporations' top management in this instance emphasize budgets and non-financial measures of performance, like market share, productivity, public image, employee morale, and relations with the host country government. Also, multiple measures should be used to differentiate between the worth of the subsidiary and the performance of its management. So a global multinational corporation, however, needs tight controls over its many units. To reduce costs and gain competitive advantage, it is trying to spread the manufacturing and marketing operations of a few fairly uniform products around the world. Therefore, its key operational decisions must be centralized. Now, in conducting environmental scanning, companies or multinational corporations must include research not only into each of the national markets in which the multinational corporations competes, but also into the global arena of the interaction between these markets. Foreign units are thus evaluated more as cost centers, revenue centers, or expense centers than as investment or profit centers because multinational corporations operating in the global industry do not often make the entire product in the country in which it is sold. Addressing global issues is simply an expectation of the modern organization, no? So it's common that you have to interact with these different issues. The question becomes how and when to expand operations beyond the borders of the company's home country. Okay? So these multinational companies have to consider all of these issues that would affect global strategy. And I think that ends the discussion on strategy implementation for global strategy. Questions? Daghan naman day ta. Hello. Wala ko bantay nga naa day mo. Do you have questions?
None so far po, sir.
Hello. Okay. Are you still there?
Dapat,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sige.
Yes, sir.
Adrian, katong ako
Sir,
ang
may
gipangayo.
buntag. Ala, sir, tama dahil,
Oh,